Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me out on the stretch. And I have a message for men and young men today of how do I choose a good reputation? And this is something where it might sound painfully obvious to a lot of guys out there or people, but this is an area where we're not necessarily getting better with discipling and encouraging younger men to make that choice to love a good name and love favor rather than silver and gold. So Proverbs 22 verse 1, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. The NLT says, choose a good reputation. And so if the choice is left up to us, how do we go about that practically speaking? And that's an area where, again, it might sound painfully obvious, but a lot of guys aren't making the right choices, obviously. Otherwise, I believe our nation would look a little bit different, or at least I would hope so. So Psalm 101, starting in verse 2, says, I will be careful to live a blameless life. When will you come to help me? I will lead a life of integrity in my own home. So how do you and I choose a good reputation? Well, it starts in our own home. Verse 3, I will refuse to look at anything vile and vulgar. I hate all who deal crookedly. I will have nothing to do with them. And so maybe that's an area of struggle, and it is for many men, that God, I will refuse to look at anything vile and vulgar. And do you hate to deal crookedly? Do you hate it in your own life? Do you hate it in others' lives? And God, I don't want to be a man who's looking at anything vile and vulgar, whether it's socially acceptable or regardless of how many other people are doing it. I hate to do this. Lord, give me pure eyes. Give me the eyes of my heart to be pure and to refuse to look at these things in my own home. Verse 4, I will reject perverse ideas. I will stay away from every evil. And so these are areas in our own lives where we're going to be presented with perverse ideas all day long, and different states, policies, etc. are passing these things. But you and I get to make the choice that we can reject these things and stay away from it. Verse 5, I will not tolerate people who slander their neighbors. I will not endure conceit and pride. So we are not to be a people who just tolerate slander, gossip, etc. And Proverbs 31 often gets a lot of attention for what, an amazing girl is, but it starts off with, for men, raise your voice for those who don't have a voice. And so you and I get to make a choice that we can stand up and not consent to slander or gossip. Verse 6 in Psalm 101, I will search for faithful people to be my companions. So you and I can't choose who our family is. We can't choose the circumstances that we were brought up in, but we can choose our friends. In Proverbs 13, verse 20, he that walks with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. And so that is very cut and dry. We get to choose the men in our lives that we get to walk with. And that is an amazing thing that I've seen in my own life when I was younger, having the wrong group of friends, but also as I've walked with the Lord, to have godly men, godly mentors in my life to point out my blind spots, to bounce things off of, different ideas, etc. And they have really poured into me. So walking with wise men will be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. And then also something that I've noticed that's unfortunately not necessarily getting better is just, what is a man's word? If we don't have that, what are we? And so I don't know any guys that don't want to be respected, but very often our lives aren't matching the respect we think we may deserve or want. And so Jesus makes it very simple for us to let your yes be yes and your no be no in Matthew 5. And so this is something when I was young in the Lord and fully surrendering to Him, I said, God, you got to give me just some good godly men. I need examples, because I did not grow up in an environment where I had a lot of just good Christian men walking the walk and were just men's men. I was never looking for perfection, but I never saw just men who were fully surrendered that I wanted to follow in the church. And I remember God gave me a few good guys, and one in particular, whenever I read Psalm 15, he just stands out to me. And so he's been married for decades. He's a man who's under authority, and he has authority because of that. And he says the right things in his heart. And so verse 1 of Psalm 15, who may worship in your sanctuary, Lord? Who may enter your presence on your holy hill? Those who lead blameless lives and do what is right, speaking the truth from sincere hearts. So again, we went from starting in our own home, starting in our own lives, And now to those who refuse to gossip or harm their neighbors or speak of evil of their friends, those who despise flagrant sinners and honor the faithful followers of the Lord and keep their promises even when it hurts. And that's a challenge for you and I today. When I do commit to something, when I give my promise, do I keep it to the end even when it hurts? And I've seen this fleshed out with men that, they've said I'll do a speaking engagement to maybe 20 or 50 people, and then in the course of events, an opportunity came up to speak to several hundreds or thousands of leaders, but they still chose to honor their first commitment. And even when it hurt, there was a financial cost to that as well. And it's amazing to see how God blesses men when they choose to honor their commitment, when they choose to honor the handshake that they made with other men. And I've seen this in my own life too. I remember giving an estimate, and the materials, were way more than I thought that they would be for this particular job. But I said, no, I'm going to trust you, Lord, to handle the matter rather than going back and changing the price. And just how the Lord will honor you and I when, again, we choose to love favor rather than silver and gold, when we choose to make that right choice. Verse 5 of Psalm 15, those who lend money without charging interest and who cannot be bribed to lie about the innocent, such people will stand firm forever. So here's a promise from God to us, men, that if we do these things, if we go to Him in private, if we go to Him and ask Him for the strength to have this character, to have this integrity, that we will be men who stand firm forever. So I really want to encourage you guys with that, and especially the young men out there. You have such an amazing opportunity, you and I, today, to begin to choose a good reputation and let the Lord's favor be upon you, and rather than worrying about all the other things or praise from man. So God bless you until next time.